Today's guest, Wil Allan, traveled around the world on a motorbike for 4 years. When she came back home to the UK, she lived alone in a cottage in the Black Mountains for 7 years, five of them without electricity. She made pots by hand, took photographs, she farmed sheep, drove a school bus, ran a holiday cottage, and raised two children on her own. She also trained as a personal performance coach and founded Being at the Cottage, which offers leadership development to leaders. Her clients don't come for strategy, they come because something isn't working, because they're exhausted, because they have built something successful but feel disconnected from it. Will believes that real leadership begins when you stop performing and start being human. That the answers we are looking for are not in the next productivity hack or business model, they are inside us. Will is a certified Havening Techniques practitioner, an NLP master practitioner, and the creator of the Leadership Renaissance experience. But what makes Will different is not her qualifications. It is her belief that we have fundamentally misunderstood what leadership is. As a mentor for Mentors for Women, Will challenges the idea that busyness equals progress, that more control creates better outcomes, or that we can lead others when we have not learned to lead ourselves. I am Virpi Tervonen, mentor at Mentors for Women. Today I'm speaking with Wil Allan, also mentor here with us. She is a potter, a wanderer, a mother, and the woman who believes the cottage in the woods holds more answers than the corner office ever will. Will, you have reinvented yourself and your career many times from farming and pottery to business and mentoring. What has been the biggest lesson for you about starting over?
Believing in myself, but just believing I can, and then finding a way to do it. And it's thankfully has got deeper and stronger as I've got older and done more. But it's fundamentally thinking, yeah, or looking at something and thinking, yeah, I can do that, and I would enjoy to do that, and then deciding I can and go and do it. That's about it.
You spent 4 years traveling the world on a motorbike in the
Mm.
1980s. What did that journey teach you?
Well, I must own up, it wasn't a solo trip. I was with my husband at the time. And what did it take? My goodness. He had been to New Zealand before I met him for about a year. And he said, when we do this, you'll find you change. And so I spent the first probably at least 6 months thinking, when am I going to change? But it taught me about synchronicity. So we left from the UK and we went across Europe and down through the east side of Africa, which took about the first 6 or 7 months. And by the time we got to South Africa, I knew that coincidences really weren't a thing, because events would keep unfolding or people would keep coming into what we needed and help us solve the problem of where to go next or how to do it or who to contact, or just don't go that way, that's worse than this way. So that was definitely one thing. It also taught me belief in myself, which is probably where that came from. I mean, when you're out there with no one else to really guide you other than this, stuff that's looking after us anyway, you have to get on with what's in front of you. And I think we were very, very lucky not either of us to break a bone, but the amount of times we fell off the bike or crashed, not with other vehicles, but because of the terrain or what was going on or having to avoid something, you kind of just have to take what's offered up and then find the best way through it. So that's really, I think, what it taught me. And I do remember I think I was sitting in a cafe in India. So we'd been traveling 3 years by now, I suppose. And I was sitting thinking, I've been hotter, I've been colder, I've been hungrier, I've been fuller. And I kind of felt I had a real sense of understanding who I was and what I could do. And it was very powerful, but very peaceful, just sitting there. James had gone off to do, I don't know, sort something out. And I was just sitting there with my cup of tea, watching the world go by and just feeling completely at peace with who I was and what I could do. And it was really powerful. And actually, weirdly, when we got back and there was so much hustle and bustle and stuff changing, it all kind of seeped into the floorboards, strangely. And it took a long time for it to come back. But it's back. I got it.
And that moment of feeling so powerfully grounded and feeling that everything is well, you're safe and everything is well, very
Yeah.
powerful. You have navigated life as a single parent and business owner in rural Wales. Can you expand what habits and mindsets it helped you through the tougher times?
Well, determination. I think I was born determined. I think my mother would have endorsed that. I always had a feeling I knew what I wanted and got really cross when I couldn't do it. So determination to follow through, definitely, if it felt right. Power of choice. Choice is just enormous because we get so, and we all are so massively socially conditioned in our way, our Western world, and what we do and how we respond. And we always have a choice on how to respond to something. And I won't go into the detail, but my son got himself in a muddle a few years ago. And I remember hearing what was going on. And I thought my initial response was to fall on the floor, cry, pick up the phone to somebody initially and find out what to do. And I thought, actually, I really don't need that. It's not good for them. It wasn't good for me. It kind of evaporated all my power, if you like, to sort of hand something over. So I took stock and I thought, well, I just went inside and thought, right, what's the best thing? Best thing is to stay with me and who I am and only speak to people who could help. And that's what I did. And it was incredibly powerful. And obviously to help him out and to help my daughter out with the situation. I still feel that choice being made. So we don't have to sort of fall into our conditioning if we train ourselves not to, basically. I think that's what I'm trying to say. And the other thing was, making decisions that take you forward. So again, it's a choice. It's the awareness of what the decision is you're making. Don't let decisions take you just because they're there. It's always, do I want this way or that way? And then if it starts to feel wrong, I mean, I am very kinesthetic, so I feel. If it feels wrong, I don't do it. And then I'll sit and wait for the right thing to show up. I mean, that sounds really flaky, but it's not. It just means feel what you know is right for you. Even if 99 people are all going that way, but you feel it's not right. So you're the 100th person and everyone else is going the other way. Have the guts, have the courage to be who you really are. I think that's what I'm trying to say. And that certainly helps with people who lead, who feel I'm expected to do this or expected to do that, and yet it doesn't feel right, then take stock and really sleep on it. Don't answer an email in a hurry, sleep on it and then find a solution, find an answer.
You talk about the value of spending time alone. Your business, Being at the Cottage, offers leadership experiences that include time alone. Why is solitude so important?
Because we can connect really deeply with our thoughts and we take time to begin to understand who we are and what we're capable of. The more gadgets we have, the more stuff we have coming in, the less time we have to be by ourselves, which is almost always for most people. I mean, I chose to go and live by myself up there. I wasn't quite sure how I'd manage. And I rented it from someone who said, you'll be on your own. Are you all right with that? And I thought, yeah, I guess. I wasn't sure. But it's really important now because if you work in an office and you're surrounded by people, you might have the corner office and be there by yourself, but you've still got everything and all that buzz of what's going on around you. When you get out, and this is why I specifically don't go into businesses. I bring them to me one at a time. I work better one-to-one. And they come out of their habitual environment and just park themselves in this two-bedroom cottage in the middle of a forest, in the middle of a wood, on the side of a hill. And it has the most, I mean, I haven't created the energy there. It's always had it, but it has the most incredible energy of holding people. You feel held and safe and secure, and then you can relax. So people can, walking, sitting, whatever, and all sorts of choreographed things that people can do. But the point is that you're there to ask yourself questions, to actually have a conversation with yourself. I often go for a walk and have a conversation with myself about what's best. And I think talking to yourself is actually very good. I don't think it's a sign of madness at all. I think it's very helpful. And also refreshing to be on your own and to experiment, because a lot of people don't even try. I think that's one of those decisions. I've never done this, but I think I could do it. Let's give it a go. Then you see what happens. I am right behind spending time alone. I think it's overlooked. I think it's undervalued. And I think it's absolutely essential.
It also sounds that you might not need to even talk to yourself. The answers are there, but you're not hearing them because of all the noise, all the demands and expectations from your environment, and also all the noise from all the gadgets that we are now supposedly following and getting information from.
Yeah, exactly that. We just don't give ourselves time to time to think, or even more time to be. Just be. Stop the judging. Stop the really shrink back the thoughts that are coming in, and to practice stopping judging people, things, events, how that happened, what that happened. It's just a thing. It just happened and it's gone. There is really only now. So once you've got into a situation, you're still in now. So don't judge it, move on. Another now appears, and you can make it a better now by deciding how you want it to be.
I loved about that, you mentioning the judgment. So we recognize when we are judging ourselves, we recognize when we're judging others, that blame game. But judging circumstances, that most of the time we can't really impact them, and we're still using a lot of our mental, emotional energy judging the circumstances or situations. So I can imagine that with your guidance, people can release a lot of that mental energy and use it more fruitfully in something that really helps.
I think so. And also the other thing is understanding when your ego is in the way. We all know what the ego is. I've done a lot of reading up about the ego and spent a lot of time learning how to identify it. And it's the sneakiest thing, but it's really important to know. If you could walk into a room and feel that you're really being you, and you just kind of maybe got your ego in a handbag or a suitcase or a briefcase or something, but it's not attached, it's not operating in you, so that when people come back at you with what could be perceived as criticism, but is just a comment, when you can manage that and be completely even-handed about it, then you're well on the way to managing. It's when the ego feels vulnerable, unsafe, and needs to protect itself, that's when it kicks off, and you blurt out something, and because you don't know it's your ego, you might not even regret what you've said. But when you begin to learn who's operating, is it my true self or is it my ego managing me, then that becomes a really big part of actually becoming, it may not be the most popular way to be, but to become a humble leader. That way you can absorb what's being said to you. You can have the self-awareness to manage it, to look into it as an observer, sort of, okay, so that was that, yeah, and that was me, that was my ego. So I can apologize for that, actually, because I got it wrong. And that makes it a much more interactive kind of process when you begin to know yourself.
The world is changing rapidly. How must leaders change their leadership style?
I really, really think we do need to move to this humble, reflective, aware, self-aware and aware perspective, where we're not the big I am. We are one of many within whatever organization we are. I happen to be the leader, but it doesn't mean to say I'm the best. It doesn't mean to say I'm the bigger person. We're all just humans in this organization, and understanding what makes people tick and actually caring about what makes people tick really makes a difference, because people then feel much more included. There is this massive split at the moment of just people in things for themselves, a lack of caring for everybody. I just think we do need to become unashamedly ready to apologize, ready to see our faults, ready to know that we're not perfect. And when other people see someone in an organization working in that way, it doesn't make them lack their own self-confidence, but it makes them own up to when things have gone wrong, and to be the person who leads that in the organization, that it's okay to be wrong and it's okay to correct, because we then come back to the basis of who we are, which is the human being, and knowing that that comes from inside, and having that confidence to say, actually, hands up, yeah, I am really sorry that happened. Or don't do it in the first place, whatever the thing is, if you can avoid it. We need to be better people. We've been taught for years that this is how we do things, and it's all external, and we get taken on these sort of off-site things and that kind of thing, and you go away for a week with a group of people, and it's sort of coming back to spending time on your own. You're still with a group of people, you're still with your colleagues. When you come back within a week or 10 days, it's all fizzled out, it's all disappeared, because the learning is quite a lot external and superficial. Whereas when you really start to look at who you are and how we really operate and what can be done to become a better person, then when that happens, you don't have to shout about the change. People will feel the change. People will see the change in you. And it's very powerful. It's very powerful.
What I'm hearing is that firstly, to actually connect with yourself better, because when you are connected with yourself, you can connect through that better with others and be more caring. And secondly, that ego thing, which sounded very much like fear-based reactive behavior, to notice when you are reacting and just to release that and be more curious and open what's really happening here in this situation, not just with me, but with others as well. So that without pleasing, becoming that pleaser, you can still be very caring from that space. So at least those two things, it sounded that more and more like we are these individualistic performers in these systems, and that has gone too far from what we human beings were actually meant for. We were meant to work together in collaboration with everyone else.
And not to be so far removed from the people who you are leading, but to be available, and availability. In fact, I'm going to have lunch with the father of a friend of mine. He's in his mid-90s now. She now lives in Canada, but he lost his wife last March. So I sort of keep in touch with him when I'm going to see him the next week. And he was a leader, and he was knighted way back for his services to industry. And I just feel that whenever I talk to him, if more people were like him, he has absolutely everything I'm talking about. And he's such a lovely person. And I just want to sort of take him with me. You want to be like Peter Phillips. It's a joy. It's a joy to see him and talk to him, because he's so interesting. He's got so many amazing stories. He's done it, and he's completely humble about it all. And it's lovely.
You're known to help clients lead from the inside out. If you would explain, what does that mean and how does that happen?
It means becoming self-referring, not rushing off to ask someone else's advice straight away. It means noticing how you're feeling when something is good, when something isn't good, and sitting with yourself, asking questions and sitting with those questions, because you will get answers. Or writing out as well is another really good way to discover what's going on, because you have an unconscious mind. We're all part of an unconscious intelligence. The solar system, or more than the solar system, the universe, we all have it. So sitting and asking a question, you're not directly asking yourself, but you are asking an intelligence and learning to tap into that intelligence in a way where you will automatically, you could write a line or you could write 3 pages, but you will get an answer which will make sense and it'll answer your question beautifully. So instead of just assuming that you know the answer, it's about knowing yourself, literally from who we are inside. I could wade into the quantum physics of it all, but I'm not going to do that today. But it is fascinating. And it begins to explain who we are beyond this physical body of ours. So that's what the inside out bit is. It's not, yes, of course, go on the things that get organized and do it, but that's still very external, and unless somebody's decided to do something different with it. But it again comes back to, we have the answers in us, and it's allowing those answers to come up and trusting that the answers will come up. And I won't make any bones about this, it doesn't happen overnight, and it is an ongoing process that we never stop learning more about ourselves. We'll never stop growing. And if what you do as a leader really matters and you really want to have an impact that actually serves the world as well as yourself and others, then it will become something that you can't help. It might creep up on you, but you realize that it's the missing link to how you've been leading, because our world, we're constantly changing. Our world is changing. The way things are panning out at the moment are really changing. And if we could have a balance with that, with the more overt, in-your-face stuff, and if we could just delve more deeply into what we understand as consciousness, which may be very, very small at the moment, but it just keeps on going down and down and down, and it's enormous, that incrementally is better than people trying to do something bad. A group of people sitting sort of, you don't even have to meditate, you just go into a sort of conscious state of awareness, that exponentially powers out all the negative. So it's important that a smaller group of people begins to grow to help, because one against one, a conscious person and a negative person, the conscious person is a much more powerful, impactful person just by being there. You don't have to say anything, you just have to bring that with you. So I'm geeking out again, sorry, but it's where I can't help being. I love it. And I want to help other people be it.
You started mentioning feelings, and what emerged to me was that what if the person says that, well, I just feel stressed, or I feel overwhelmed, or I just feel exhausted? How do you actually go through, like, the lead from the inside out when those are the emotions that you're feeling and you cannot really connect with yourself?
I get that. Knowing that in the first place is good, so that you can begin to do something about it. If I was working with somebody, I would keep it superficial to begin with, because it's all very well saying be like this, but it's a process. I would find out what was perhaps buried, some way of being, beliefs that limit us, occasions that have been unhelpful. With havening, you mentioned I'm a havening practitioner. This is a process which is a touch process where you stroke the arms down. I could do it to a client, or the client and me can do it together, but you take something that is either an event which has happened, which stops you doing other things and stresses you out, or you can use just a condition that you are, where you feel bad about something, but it changes the neural pathways in the brain as you continue to do it. So it's incredibly powerful. It's very soothing. You can do it on your own. And I would discover first. I have a 2-night process where I work with the client for a day up at the cottage, and I call it dissolving the barriers, because I think once we've dissolved some barriers, we've got room to move forward. So I would spend the day working with them, and I'm sure most times I use havening because I find something, and between us, we discuss something that's holding them back, and we use this process. And you can do it for 10 minutes, or you can do it every day at home a little bit, or we would bust something through. So I would find out what was stressing them and why, and give them some easy techniques to go back to, something to anchor in that makes them feel better, a better thought. Because if we constantly have negative thoughts, we're constantly in the situation which we want to get rid of. So we need to find the right solution to bring that person into a place where they feel relaxed, and then help them know how to return to that feeling whenever the opposite comes. And it is all practice, and it's all something you need to pay attention to, and you have to want to do it. Because if you think, oh, this is too hard work, I'd rather feel stressed, well, fine, that's how it is. but it's possible. We can unpick ourselves in a really wholesome way and become more powerful, more relaxed. And when we're more relaxed, we're more aware, and we can notice in others when they're less relaxed, because we know what that used to feel like when we've sorted it. I mean, it's a huge topic, and each person is absolutely individual in whatever they have going on. But how we think is at the basis, at this stage, at the basis of how we become and how we feel. So if we notice the thought, and then teach ourselves to become aware enough of what that thought, how it makes us feel, when you change the feeling, you'll begin to change the outcome. But it is all about how we feel. So if you're feeling fulfilled and happy, and just, joy doesn't come naturally to everybody, but if we can aim for that, the great book, the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu, their Book of Joy, it's just a lovely, lovely book. But if you can turn a feeling of feeling fearful into a feeling of feeling level, and I can manage this, you will then be in a much more powerful position. And then from managing, you can bring it to something slightly higher that brings you up into a feeling of greater possibility. And then greater possibility can become, I can do much better than this. And so you climb up with that feeling, and you'll notice the feeling. It's an inside feeling that's there. It doesn't come from, anybody else. I mean, you might feel good in other people's company, but if you're still stressed, you need to get it inside you.
So leading from the inside out, it sounds like it's still thinking based, but the thing is that you're not just thinking with a logical brain. You are connected with your emotional and spiritual brain as well, so that you feel connected and whole. Would that capture it? And also, basically, there are always obstacles. We have built masks and barriers and whatever safety net, our coping mechanism. So it's also dissolving some of those, so that you can actually connect those all kind of brains or all kind of thinking.
Yeah. And it's also being willing to have the vulnerability to look inside. And some of that can be very upsetting, and doesn't, would be for another person possibly, but we need to look inside and see what is at the base. We need to find the root cause, and we need to be brave enough to find the root cause, because once we can, what's the word I'm looking for? Neutralize the root cause. Know it's there, but have no emotional attachment to it. That's what havening will do. That's what NLP can do. So we still have the memory, but we don't have the emotion attached to it. It's just a remarkably powerful thing. And that's why I get frustrated when I listen to certain things on the radio, and someone will say, oh, I'll have this with me for the rest of my life. And I think, but you don't have to. Something can be done. And people just are not yet aware enough of how powerful working with someone else can be, but also how powerful we are in ourselves to develop that awareness and know, actually, this isn't real. It can be unpicked and it can be sorted, and I can be a better person for it. So, yeah, you had it right in a nutshell. Yeah.
We have covered quite a lot about what can be blocking your inner leadership, but what are some other blocks or hang-ups you see most often in leaders who come to you for coaching or mentoring?
They're also individual. I mean, it's not necessarily a block in their leadership. It nearly always boils down to what's going on inside them. So who they are, which is why it matters to pay attention to the human being that you are. I mean, I've coached people in all sorts of situations, but the reason I ended up here is because whenever I coached anybody, whether it was women after divorce or small business owners or people who had money issues, that they had a really poor relationship with money, I would always go down to the human being and what was going on at the bottom of it. So it's almost, they will all come with, I can't even individualize it really, because I'll sit with somebody. In fact, I remember a few years ago, just before lockdown, actually, she was the last client that came to me before everything got shut down. And she was high up in her company and an executive assistant to someone very high up. And she was really good at her job. And within moments of walking into the house and just getting to know each other a little bit, she came out with something from her childhood that she'd never said to anybody before. And it was crucial to how she saw herself in a leadership role in her position in this company. It had nothing to do with her job, except that it was in the way of her job because she didn't have the confidence or the tools because of this instance in her childhood. So it's really difficult to pinpoint because what comes out on the surface of people's hang-ups, for want of a better description, is always something that just needs to be spoken about, which is why I call what I do conversations, because I'll give people tasks to do, but I don't set goals. I don't do this with them. It's not the conventional way of having a coaching session. We might talk for 3 hours backwards and forwards and dig around, and I might think, well, that's, would you be okay if we did this intervention that would do this or this? It's very intuitive. So somebody once asked me, well, what's the best question you've ever asked? And I said, well, I won't know until I've met them. It's just it depends what's there. So yeah, I mean, I haven't really answered your question very well, other than to say that we all have our issues. I mean, I've ended up doing what I'm doing thanks to 2 rubbish relationships I had in many ways. My first husband, who I travelled with, was incredibly controlling and I could barely think for myself, but I was too young to know. And I left that relationship after we got back, about a year or so after we got back, and went into something much worse. And I remember sitting in the kitchen of the farm. I had my son by then. I hadn't got my daughter. She hadn't arrived yet, but I was sitting there with he's only about a year old, 18 months old possibly, and I was sitting in the kitchen and Ian had gone out to do something with the stock. And I was sitting, I've done this all over again, but it was bells on. And it was such a lesson that I needed, I was just allowing people to abuse me, basically. They were just rubbishing me. So, and I realised then that having done it twice, I had to sort myself out. It was really important that I took stock of myself, sorted myself out in terms of who I am, what I wanted and what I could say no to. Because I was just abused. So, I mean, that's thankfully all in the past. But everything becomes a lesson if we are aware enough to sit back and look at it. So I was just sitting at this table, kind of looking at myself, giving my son breakfast. And I thought, my God, there's me and there's me. I thought, wow, that's a really weird thing. But we've all got that. We've all got that ability to step back and look at who we are, what we're doing and how we're behaving, and use it as a lesson. And, congratulate ourselves when we got it right, but use it as a lesson because we're complex, we're full of complications and ups and downs and emotions and everything. And if I could just help some people to become better at what they do, who they are and how they do it, to make a difference to our world, I get a lot of satisfaction. I feel just made up when I can help somebody. I really do.
So what it sounds like, the blocks and hang-ups are always very personal. They're very individual, but it's given that we all have them. We all have them.
We all,
We all have
yeah,
them.
definitely. We can't, nobody can strut down the high street saying, I'm perfect, I'm done. Never.
What you started to then talk about was that we might not be aware that it's our identity and arts is being loyal to an identity that is outmoded. It might have been something that worked during a season, but we have not renewed our identity. We have not even known that we can renew our identity, and we don't betray our previous version of us if we renew our identity. And not knowing that there are actually tools for that. There are very working and functional methods to help you to renew your identity. So that's what I'm getting.
I think that's a good way of putting it. I actually fell out with a friend a few years ago, and I'd known her for about 30 years because, well, it just, she'd kind of had a massive lack of empathy over whatever was happening. And I was trying to sort it out by email. And I shouldn't really have gone down that route. But anyway, it wasn't. But I just said, you don't know me anymore, because I have changed so much at my response and my way of doing things. And I have a view of life which is so much bigger than it used to be. And I'm not all absorbed with myself in the way that I used to be. And the way I see things is very, very different to how I did. And she was incredibly offended. She didn't understand how I could have changed, basically. But we can, and we do. And I mean, I am a geek about growth and personal development and that kind of thing. So not everybody has to sort of geek out on it in the way I do, because that's what I'm there for, to help you make the difference you want to make. But I'm intrinsically the same, but also completely different. My outlook on life is utterly different. Because it's just much kinder than it used to be. And, it's a great place to be. But we change, and it's a good thing. It does it. If we get it in a way that encompasses everything, then it doesn't make us weaker to be kinder. It makes us stronger, always, without a doubt.
Nice is weak, but being kind is strong.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely.
Mentors for Women is about supporting each other's journey. And you just actually described something that when you take a proactive role in your own change, because we do change throughout the life, but when we're proactive with it, we also might outgrow, that could be a word, some of the relationship that we have.
Yeah, definitely happens.
So that could be sometimes a concern. But what kind of impact does your mentoring have?
It's largely positive. I'm sure there are times when that might happen, but I think when we shift from seeing a perspective that might have been small and a little bit ego, I suppose, a little bit all about me instead of all about other people and me. But in terms of helping other people, it works. I mean, it works. Because I can sometimes, doesn't always happen, but when people, and I feel really privileged actually to be able to do it, because when someone says, they'll go quiet for a bit, and then they'll just quietly say, I've never said that to anybody before. It just makes me want to burst into tears, actually, because it's such a powerful thing. And that then is a change in them. That is a consistent change. It's a fundamental change in them. I don't think I've ever coached anyone who's fallen out massively with other people as a result. But it makes people more objective and step back. So they will be in a better position to see what's changing. So it's likely to, if it happens, it's likely to come from the other direction. So someone else might say back to them, you've changed so much, I don't think I can be with you, or I can do this or do that, because they're not moving. And I think that's why some relationships fall apart, because if one is growing and doing a lot of change work and the other isn't, then a sort of a chasm can appear. But if you both work together, I mean, I think people spend so much on weddings these days, and I just think if they could put as much into how to build a relationship together before they get married, and then spend your 45 grand or whatever it is on what you're going to do, because that will help them become a united couple. and how to be properly, as a couple. So it's very difficult. That question is a difficult one to quantify. People go away and are happy to grow. And it's a good thing as far as I'm concerned. And I mean, I never talk to people about any sort of collateral damage that might happen because of it. But both my two relationships, I just knew I couldn't stand what was going on any longer. It wasn't a case of me being better than, growing more, or anything else. It was realizing that actually it was unacceptable behavior, which was a big one for me to actually even notice. I've spent many years unpicking them both, which has been really useful.
Well, it sounds to me that when you are taking a proactive role in your own growth, it actually empowers you to leave behind the poor relationship, maybe some relationship that are actually really damaging and even unsafe for you. And then you have more space for relationship and make them deeper and more fruitful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, Will, what is one thing you want everyone listening to this remember?
I'm sure I've written a little something. Your innate potential, or actually, I came across a better word for that thanks to Marianne Williamson. I reread one of her books recently. We always talk about our potential, but she talks about human capacity. I think that's a much, much better word, because potential is all in the future. We haven't quite got it yet. Capacity, it's within us. We have the capacity, but we need to recognise it. I wrote a little book, which I still need to publish, but I haven't, called How to Lead from the Inside Out. And I've just rebuilt my website, and that's got this phrase in it. It's about becoming the archaeologist and the architect of our life. The archaeology is doing the digging around and scraping carefully the layers. Don't go in with a big spade. You just carefully scrape back the layers, see what we find, deal with it if it's necessary, and leave what's there. We don't want to become entirely different people. We know with lots and lots of lovely bits, but the little bits we don't want, we're the archaeologist of that, and we deal with it. And then we become the architect of who do we want to be? How do we want to be to do the role we've got? Whether it's being a mother and managing a crisis, or whether it's being a leader and managing a crisis, could we not possibly manage them in a similar way, with some compassion, with some standing back and looking at a situation and saying, well, actually, I don't have to go in all guns blazing. I can go in like this or like that. So that's becoming the architect. If that's all you can take away from my rambling this morning, I would love you to take that away. I think it's a key thing.
Thank you so much, Will. I love the mental picture and also collect the guidance that these two roles for ourselves, be gentle archaeologist and then precise architect for being that future us. Thank you so much for this interview,
Absolute
Will.
pleasure. Loved it. Lovely to see you again.